Hey folks, it's that time of the year where I take my fly traps, Venus flytraps, out of dormancy, and they're actually, I think, a little ahead of me because I've done something a little different this year. I kept them kind of by the growinator, but out of direct light. Down here in the basement, it's cold enough that they go into dormancy. This is the first year I had them by the light, so they were ready to go before I started separating them. So I got to get going on this, and as you can see here on this large one, it is just clump after clump after clump after clump, which it looks great when they all start growing out. Right now they're still just coming out of dormancy, so they shrink down in the winter. So what I'm going to do is do some separating. You can see where I've done it in the past was with these guys and these. It takes about 2 years when you separate rhizomes to get them to the full maturity. And you can see these ones, these last year were tiny. So this year looks like they're going to do really well. Now last year what I used was peat moss, this black stuff here, because that's what I had and that's what I use for gardening, which works fine, but I don't really care for it as much as this New Zealand long stem sphagnum moss. You can see it there. This is what it looks like in a bag. It's compressed, and what I'll do is I'll rehydrate it, and it should balloon out to a large size. It's just cleaner, it looks nicer, a little pricey, but when you're just using it for something small like this, I think it's worth it. Now I'll be using distilled water. You can't use tap water on these, it'll kill them. They're reasonably easy to care for, but they do have some requirements or they will die. First being, hey, you gotta have distilled water. Second is they like a lot of light. Third is you gotta put them in a dormancy 3 months of the year, which I do the basement, but if you have a refrigerator you can use that as well. And the other thing is, when you start messing with them, closing the traps, I mean, you can do that, but it wears them out, and you'll eventually kill them doing that with people trying to feed them. And these didn't develop on their own and survive in the wild without being able to do what they do, and that's to eat insects, and they do just fine on their own. So you don't need to feed them. They'll catch bugs very readily and very easily, no matter where you live. So what I'm going to do is I've got these baskets for hydroponics, and I'm going to use those, start some new starts in there, and I'll use this bowl to rehydrate and also rinse off some of this peat moss. And hopefully we'll get a bunch of them and some really good new starts. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention, for keeping them alive, they have to stay wet always. You cannot let them dry out, they'll die. So that's another reason to use peat moss or this long stem sphagnum moss, is that it keeps them constantly wet. You have to keep them constantly wet, and that's why I'm using these bowls to have a basin where the peat moss can draw from. Alright, well, let's get started. So I've got my little thin wafer. I'm going to plop it in there, and again, use distilled water to rehydrate. I don't know how long this will take. I haven't bought a block like this before. While I'm waiting for this to hydrate, I wanted to point out something real quick. And it is just on this guy that I can tell right now, right here. There's a flower. Now, if I allow it to go to seed, I might lose this trap. So generally, people don't let them go to seed. You can, and they'll propagate just fine. However, it takes 3 to 5 years to start a plant from seed to get it to a decent size. So most people are like myself, they use the rhizome separation, or you can use leaf separation even, and that takes some time as well. I found that the rhizome separation is the fastest. Now, you're not going to get as many, but as you can see, I have plenty. I don't even know what I'll do with the ones I'm getting here now. Just wanted to point that out. Okay, so it's sucked up about half a gallon of distilled water, and it's still getting bigger, so I've got another bowl here. I'm going to separate. You can get an idea of the texture here. It's good stuff. People use it for growing orchids as well. It's really good for that. And I got a decent amount here, it looks like. Plenty to work with. Okay, so I'm going to separate this one. It looks like we might have 1, 2, 3. Looking at maybe 3 right now. But the main reason is I want to get rid of this peat moss anyway. So I might actually leave all 3 in the same pot, because I do want to use this pot. So very carefully. They have a long root, and I don't want to damage that. No, there we go. This pot's a good size. What I could do, just drop that in there like that. I'm going to layer a little bit on the bottom, but that'll work out nicely. And that way, too, I won't end up with the big mess when I'm end up separating again. So let's have a look. Very carefully. So, maybe some starch right there. So very carefully. See the rhizome right there. There's 1, there's 2. Looks like a 3rd one splitting off. See the long roots. Oh, there's another one. It's going free. So there. I got this little guy separated. I'm going to try and rinse him off. And I'll put him in a pot. Okay, got him settled in. Just kind of, you give him some air to breathe. You don't have to mush it in there, but you want some contact so that there's no chance of drying out. Just want you to get a good look at these bigger rhizomes here. That's pretty good size. And that can be separated, it looks like, too, as well. Okay, so I got this guy off. And this will make a good sized trap, because this is just coming out of dormancy, so it should be fully mature this year. Just kind of wrap it on in there. Well, I'll go back and do that properly, and we'll just take a look at this guy. And there's another little baby right here. So that's all there is to it for separating these. And they should fill in nicely this year. I mean, this is a big trap. This one's all done, all set. It will grow out really nicely once it starts taking off. This whole thing should be full. And I did find another flower starting. Now, I've read you can clip them off and start those. They'll start their own plant. You just stick them in the moss. But boy, what to do with this just big clump. I have no idea how many are in here. Now this is grass. I've let the grass grow in here. It kind of hitchhiked on with the sphagnum moss. And I kind of like it. There's too much now. I don't mind a few peeking up here and there. But I think I was kind of tempted to just leave this be. But I think I'm gonna take some of these apart and give a little bit more room and start some new ones. But this is gonna take a little while. Well, I managed to break the pot, taking these out. And that was because the roots had grown all the way into the bottom. Now a lot of this is from the grass. Heck, it might be from the sphagnum moss, I don't know. But this is going to take some work to get some really nice rhizomes right there. So we'll get these separated. I'll have to get a new pot. It had sat out in the sun the last couple years anyway, so it had kind of weakened. And I might just have to get a couple more too. Okay, I've done about all the separating I want to do with these, and just kind of left them in 4 big clumps. Just because I didn't want to. I'd already damaged some of the longer roots, and which they'll rebound from just fine. But it might take a little longer. So these are really nice clumps. They'll easily fill the pot I had them in. So we got 4 nice clumps there, and then here got a bunch of little babies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 of them. And that's the size these were last year when I did this. And these are just kicking off, so it'll take a year, and then they'll be a really nice size. Alright, so let's get all these potted, and then I'll just have these 2 I'm going to redo. These 2 up here I'm going to redo as well. And this one's growing out of the side, so definitely got to fix that. Going to have to cut that open. And then use the long stem for this guy. Here's a very nice sized rhizome. This is actually the one that was growing through the side under the water of the net pot. Okay, so that'll wrap up the separating for this year. Got quite a few out of it. I could have broken them down a lot more than this, but this is plenty. I don't know what I'm going to do with this many. Hopefully sell a few maybe. I do know for certain though that there's going to be a lot less bugs on the deck this summer. See you next time. Bye.